Welcome to Bookworthy. Today, we are discussing the latest dragon tale from fantasy author Bryan Davis. The Sacred Scales is book one of the Dragons of Camelot, a middle-grade, faith-building fantasy adventure from the best-selling Dragons in Our Midst story world. I'm excited to hear more about this new series from the dragon guy himself. Welcome to Bookworthy, Bryan.
Well, it's great to be here, Valerie. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure. We are big fans of your books in our house, and so it's fun to get to have a little chat with you. But to start us off, I will start with our random question of the week. If you could invent a holiday, what would you celebrate? Or of all the random holidays that there are out there, which one's your favorite?
Well, there are hundreds and hundreds of them. But the one I think that I've tried to celebrate the most is National Donut Day. And I like the long johns with the chocolate cover, the cream filling. I don't eat them much, otherwise I'd get too bloated. But National Donut Day, let's go with that.
That sounds good. I think my kids would choose that one too, because they're always a fan of donuts. It's not something we do a lot of, and so Long Johns are a new favorite in our household too, so that's fun. Well, Bryan, tell us a little bit about the Dragons of Camelot, book one.
Well, Dragons of Camelot, it's got a long history. My stories started with Dragons in Our Midst, a 4-book series, started with Raising Dragons. That came out more than 20 years ago.
Wow.
And it expanded to 3 series, Dragons in Our Midst, Oracles of Fire, Children of the Bard, making 12 books. Because I do a lot of selling at homeschool conventions, and a lot of parents tell me, wow, our kids love dragons, but you don't have anything for the younger kids. You know, the absolute minimum age for Dragons in Our Midst is usually 10. You know, some homeschoolers, they have 8 or 9-year-olds who can read way up above, but not many can handle books this size. So Tyndale wanted me to do something for youngers, 8 to 12 years old. So I was trying to think of what I could do. And in Dragons in Our Midst, there's a flashback chapter that talks about what happened during the time of Camelot and King Arthur. So I decided to expand that. And I had expanded it a little bit in Oracles of Fire. Now I'm going to have a 4-book series based on that time period and feature 2 new characters, 2 11-year-old kids, boy and a girl. And those people who read Dragons in Our Midst are going to be amazed at how much help these 2 kids had in the series. They were unknown, but now you're going to find out what really happened to help the dragons. Well, I don't want to spoil too much, but
help the dragons survive, right?
How did they survive? And I'm already writing the 4th book. The first one hasn't come out. I'll have all 4 books done before the first one comes out. So this should come out pretty quickly because they'll all be done.
That's amazing. How did your approach to storytelling change since Dragons in Our Midst and your other books are more for YA and this one's more for middle grade?
Well, I have younger characters. Whenever I have a challenging vocabulary word, I make sure that the context explains it. Or maybe one the kids say, what does that mean? And then an adult will tell them what it means. And I didn't have to do that so much with the YA. Also, the kids, even though they're heroic and courageous, they're still kids. And they do what you might expect 11-year-olds to do. Not always thinking through everything. They might react and they might try to do the right thing, but it might not always be the right thing. They're always good. They're always good and kind and try to do the right thing, but not always. It doesn't always work out that way.
That is very true.
It all works out in the end. And it's nice to be able to have more freedom to allow the heroes to make reasonable mistakes for that age.
Very true.
When they get older and you get adult characters and readers are going, well, that was stupid. You know?
What? Adults aren't allowed to make stupid mistakes? Well,
not as much as an 11-year-old.
I guess so.
But it was fun. It's been fun to write these books.
Very neat. And but I've gotten to read through book one, and it's very fun to see how there's correlations between Dragons in Our Midst and your other books, and just kind of be like, oh, I wonder if that ties in
Oh,
here and that kind
so
of
you've
thing.
read
So
the Sacred Scales.
I have read the Sacred Scales. It
No
was
spoilers, though.
no spoilers. I'm trying not to. Well, the characters in your books speak very freely about their faith. Why did you decide to make faith a very big part of your books?
Well, for one thing, I think it's needed. And there's so many, even Christian authors who try to, put in little bits of faith. And that's not me. I live my faith out fully. I speak the scriptures. My wife and I pray together every day. We have devotions every day. That's our lives. And I assume that that's the lives of many Christians. So why hide it? Let's be overt about it. If we're Christians, show how we really live. At least that's how I do and my family. Not all my books are like that. I have some books that are more Christian themed. But my hope is that if it goes to a wider audience, people will be pointed to my Dragons in the Midst books, where it is more overt and clear. So I do both, but for this series, we have Christian characters. We're going to have them living Christian lives.
I think that's really neat because your two characters, you have one that is very strong in his faith and one that is kind of coming to understand faith. And it's neat to watch her journey and just how both characters deal with their circumstances, because they both kind of experience the same thing as their inciting incident. But, it's neat to see how faith impacts them both differently and how they cling to that, and it pushes them through the story. And we don't see that a lot in fantasy.
I did the same thing in Raising Dragons, and that one, the girl had the stronger faith, and the boy was coming along. So I just switched up the genders on that, and so, got to be fair.
Very true. We all struggle, no matter our gender, for sure. Now, fantasy titles are pretty regularly the best-selling books in YA and even in middle grade, too. Why do fantasy stories resonate so strongly with young people?
I think it's because it allows them to have heroes that you might not be able to in other genres, because in other genres that are so realistic, people might say, oh, nobody's that awesome, like Aragorn and Lord of the Rings and Aslan and Chronicles of Narnia. But in fantasy, people seem to allow it and say, well, it's fantasy. Somebody can be that awesome. Samwise Gamgee in Lord of the Rings. Who would ever be such a loyal friend? And allowing characters who are larger than life, I think, help them to be better role models. And that can stretch young readers and say, I want to be like Sam. I want to be like Aragorn. And for my characters, I want to be like Billy. I want to be like Bonnie. And since they're in our own world, that makes them more relatable and more reachable. So that's why I chose fantasy, because I think readers forgive the unrealistic expectations a little more and allow the readers to be stretched. That's what I want to be like.
I like that a lot. And I see that in my own kids, and that they're drawn to characters that are larger than life because of that insecurity that we have, that, I can't do the hard things. I can't do that. But when we see larger than life characters, it almost makes it possible for them to think, I can do the right thing. I can step up and speak up in this wild and busy world.
You wouldn't believe all the emails I get from readers who say they have stepped up. I could tell you so many stories, literally thousands of stories, anywhere from a 6-year-old girl who said, I'm not afraid to sleep without my nightlight anymore. And a 17-year-old girl who got the courage to report the abuse from her father that she was suffering. A 44-year-old man who repented of his abuse of his family and became a Christian. I could just tell you so many of this. So these characters help them to stretch and say, yes, I can do it. And then they do.
That's amazing what books can do. And I love that you've had this, with Dragon in Our Midst and all your other books, just this long history of seeing your books make an impact, where a lot of, at least I've seen a lot of Christians be like, fantasy is no good. It's not for the Christian audience. And it's like, no, it helps us see further into ourselves and helps us stretch ourselves so much. And I love that you have gotten to see that in your writing journey. Now, I have kind of a different question for you. I'm a bit of a King Arthur fan myself. So what made you want to have Merlin and that King Arthur world in your Dragon in the Midst and kind of work in that genre?
That's an interesting story. When I first started writing, more than 20 years ago, I was trying to figure out how to become published, and I had shared my stories with my kids. And so one night I had a dream about a boy who could breathe fire. And I thought it was an interesting dream. So I told my oldest son about it. He was 13 at the time. His name's James. And he said, "Oh, that's a cool story. That's a great dream. You should write a story about that, because it'd be a lot better than that other stuff you've been writing." Oh, great.
Honesty.
Thanks a lot. So we brainstormed on how to make this dream into a story. And we decided that this boy had parents who used to be dragons. And
Perfect
then my
sense.
son just popped up and said, "Well, let's say that they transformed back in the time of King Arthur, because I love King Arthur stories." So it was his idea to go back and make a King Arthur backstory. So we just brainstormed for a couple of hours until we came up with the entire premise for Dragons in Our Midst. And I didn't know anything about writing fantasy back then. And at 13 years old, he had already read hundreds of fantasy stories. So he helped me. And now he's 42, and he still helps me. Because if I have an idea, I bounce it off him to say, "Has this been done in any book before?" Because now he's read thousands of books. He speed reads. And he'll tell me, "Well, yeah, that was done in such and such, but if you make a twist, he'll help me figure out something unique." And that's how it happened. Collaboration with my son is how I got into the King Arthur part.
I love how we keep coming back to great stories like King Arthur, and there's just something about that story world that has been done many different times, but each one is unique and powerful in its own way. And because I think there is a very large, almost gospel message in the King Arthur story, a lot of Savior themes that are in there too, that just help bring the gospel to the forefront of our minds and to be reminded of those things. So I kind of like those little hints to King Arthur, because I have a few of those books for sure. Now, what is it? Let's see if I can find the question. The Sacred Scales emphasizes the importance of prayer. What do you advise, or what advice do you have for young people who want to make prayer more a central part of their lives?
Well, you notice in Sabina's innocence and her young faith that she just comes out and says whatever's on her mind. She calls God Papa. And it's so intimate. It's so casual. I think I want young people to know that you don't have to use all the prayer words that everybody uses. Holy Father, listen and say his name over and over again. Just talk. God loves you. And I want young people to realize that in prayer, it's just talking to God. It's so simple, and God longs to hear you. And that's why I put that in there. So in her simple innocence, and all of my characters who are Christians pray in that way. And that's the guide that I want to give them. Just talk. Tell God what's on your heart. And I'd like kids to learn to pray that way.
Yeah, just to pray like they're having a conversation. Like they're so open to talk with, us parents, especially when they don't want to go to bed. They'll open up an entire world. And that's the same type of world that God wants to be invited into also. It's just what's going on in our hearts and our minds. And I love that your characters make that tangible and in a way that is relatable to kids that are in that 8 to 12 range, that they can talk to God, they can ask for help. And, God may not always answer immediately, but he will answer and he will be present. And that I love that in your books. Now, when did you realize that you wanted to be a writer?
Well, this goes even further back, more than 30 years ago. All our kids were homeschooled. We have 7, and they weren't doing very well with writing, the topic of writing. And I looked at the curriculum and I saw why, because, who likes vocabulary drills and things like that? So I said, let's just write a story together. And I didn't know much about storytelling, but I was good at grammar and sentence structure. So I wrote a chapter and a story, and then my wife read it out loud to the kids. And then I said, all right, kids, what do you think is going to happen next? What's the good guy going to do? What's the bad guy going to do? And they chime in with their ideas. And sometimes they would contradict each other, but then the next week I would write the next chapter, try to put their ideas into the story. So we just developed this story. And then after a while, I got them to say, all right, instead of telling me your ideas, I want you to write them down. And that got them into the writing mode. And then it grew. They started handing in 2 pages and 10 pages. I couldn't keep up with their ideas anymore. So they just started writing their own stories, which is exactly what I wanted them to do. They got excited about writing. But what I didn't expect was that it would create a passion in me to write. Because I saw how powerful storytelling is. And I should have known, because Jesus used stories to teach. But it helped me to realize, maybe I could be an author and have more of an impact on the world, because I was in computers, total IT guy. And it was a good job. It was moral and ethical and whatever, but it wasn't really making an impact on the world. It's what I wanted to do. So I started on a journey to become a writer. It took me a lot of years. The book I wrote with my kids, it ended up being a novel, and I submitted it to publishers, got rejected a bunch of times, and I started writing the Dragons book after that dream I had. And it took 8 years to find a publisher for that. But it was this exercise with my kids that got me to want to be a writer.
That's so fun. I've seen other authors kind of, what is it? It's a buddy book. Trying to think. I know the same with S.D. Smith with his Green Ember stories, and I think even Watership Down was also like a story that he told with his kids, and it just became, a novel. And I love that stories can be just part of our family culture as much as it is a part of what we enjoy. And, I know I have a kiddo that has dyslexia, and so him picking up a book is not really what he's going to do. But if we read together as a family, if we listen to audiobooks in the car, he's still immersed in that world, and still we've made it a part of our family culture that he loves to write comic books instead of, novels. And so it's still fun just to make that a part of our home.
Definitely.
Now, what's a book that's been most impactful in your life other than the Bible?
Other than the Bible. Okay. Can I name 3 books?
I think I can allow it.
Okay. My top 3 novels of all time have striking similarities. My favorite novel is To Kill a Mockingbird. My second is Mark Twain's version of Joan of Arc. A lot of people don't know that Mark Twain wrote the book on Joan of Arc. It's his best work by far. He even said so. He wrote his own endorsement and said, this is my most excellent work. And the third one is Till We Have Faces by C.S. Lewis. Have you heard that one before?
I have, yes.
Okay. All 3 of them have similar elements. They're all written in first person. They all are from an older person looking back like a memoir. But the most important part is they each have a trial, some kind of trial, courtroom type trial. And in each one, the person on trial is harshly judged. Kill a Mockingbird, the slave, not the slave, but the black guy, what's his name?
I'm not remembering.
I don't remember, but he was found guilty of raping a woman, and he was innocent. And then Joan of Arc, obviously, she was burned at the stake, and she was innocent. And there was a trial in Till We Have Faces. It's a lot more complicated and difficult to explain, but she was still harshly judged. So that impacted me severely, knowing that there's so much harsh judgment in this world. And one of my main themes that I have throughout my books is mercy and forgiveness. And I really want my readers to understand that mercy and forgiveness are some of the most powerful things you can do. This world is so lacking in mercy and forgiveness, and I want to train young people to think in those terms, that we need to be merciful. We've all made mistakes, and we don't know what is in the background of people who have hurt us. So that's what I try to do. And those 3 books really helped me.
And, it's one of those mercy and forgiveness are definitely very strong themes in your books. And I love how it is teaching young kids to look at things a little bit differently too. I know in my own parenting, having one of my kids was bullied for a while, and we just kind of had to sit back and be like, let's think about the kid that's bullying you. And we had a almost divine interaction to where we got to see how he was involved with his older brothers. And so he's like, do you see where this is coming from? And it's really
he's hurting.
Yeah, he's hurting and he's taking it out on you. And it was a really great faith moment for my son, just to be like, oh, God sees me. He sees this kid and wants, me to forgive him just as much as, God wants to forgive that boy too. And so it's neat for kids to see those instances where it doesn't make sense to forgive or doesn't make sense to give mercy, and to see those examples. And
in the stories, as you know, there are also truly evil people. And you have to, that's a different battle.
Very true. Coming to terms with that the world is not the way God intended it is another mental battle for sure. Well, what can we expect next from you?
Well, like I told you, I've written all 4 of the sacred, the series, Dragons of Camelot, that starts with Sacred Scales. So those will be coming out over time. Tyndale, the publisher, is also going to reintroduce all the Oracles of Fire and Children of the Bard books. So those will be coming out. After I finish this 4th book of Dragons of Camelot, I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I have a lot of ideas. See this banner behind me, the superhero. I might write a sequel series for that. It's very popular. Kids love it. A lot of ideas. I haven't run out of ideas yet. So
it's a good problem to have.
We'll see.
Well, Bryan, where can people find out more about you and your books?
Well, at my website, daviscrossing.com. Davis, my last name, Crossing, CROSSING.com. You can see a sample chapter of all my books. If you click on the books link, and all my books will be listed based on genre, age appropriateness, and then you can link to see sample chapters of each book. And of course, all the retail places, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, they're all over the place.
You definitely are all over the place for sure. Well, thank you for joining us today and telling us a little bit about your Dragons in Camelot series.
It's been a pleasure, Valerie. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And thank you for joining Bryan and me on this episode of the Bookworthy podcast. Check the show notes for any books or links that we discussed, and let us know in the comments what holiday you would invent, or what is your favorite random holiday. Is it donuts or chocolate or something else? Remember, it's not too late to join the Bookworthy Summer Reading Challenge. You can find all the information at www.valeriefentress.com. Happy reading!